The courtroom in the coastal town of Mariners Cove was a symphony of muted chaos, pens scratching against notepads, the creak of wooden benches, and the low hum of ceiling fans battling the humid August air. Judge Mariana Torres presided over the bench, her silver-streaked hair pulled into a tight bun, her dark eyes sharp and unwavering. At 52, she was a pillar of the community, known for her unshakable commitment to justice and her ability to see through the noise to the truth. It was a Thursday afternoon, and the docket was routine, a string of minor disputes and petty crimes typical of a seaside town where tourists and locals often clashed. The bailiff's voice cut through the murmur, the state of California versus Rafael Castillo. Mariana adjusted her glasses, her fingers brushing the edge of her gavel as she scanned the file. Burglary, vandalism, possession of stolen goods, charges that painted a picture of desperation rather than malice. She sighed inwardly, a familiar weariness settling in her chest. Another case, another story of a life gone off course. But when the defendant stepped forward, the air shifted. Shackled hands, a faded denim jacket, and a posture that spoke of defeat, Rafael Castillo wasn't just another name on her docket. Mariana's breath caught as she studied his face, the high cheekbones, the faint scar above his left eyebrow, the hazel eyes that flickered with a spark she hadn't seen in decades. It was Rafa, the boy who'd once been her shadow, her confidant, her tether to a world beyond the confines of their small, salt-worn town. Her mind spiraled back to 1985, when they were 12 years old, inseparable despite the odds stacked against them. Mariana had grown up in a tidy clapboard house near the docks, her parents scraping by as fishmongers. Rafael's family lived in a ramshackle trailer on the edge of the marshlands, his mother a seamstress and his father a drifter who came and went like the tides. Their friendship had been forged in the quiet spaces, hours spent exploring the jagged cliffs, skipping stones across the bay, dreaming of a future where they'd escape Mariners Cove together. One memory burned brighter than the rest, the night they'd sat on the pier, legs dangling over the water, as a storm brewed on the horizon. Rafael had turned to her, his voice steady despite the wind. "Mari, promise me something. If I ever lose my way, you'll find me. You'll pull me back." She'd laughed, brushing off the weight of his words, and promised anyway, sealing it with a pinky swear as lightning split the sky. Now, 30 years later, that promise echoed in her ears as Rafael stood before her, a stranger in handcuffs. The courtroom faded, the walls closing in as she grappled with the collision of past and present. His eyes met hers for a fleeting moment, recognition, shame, and something softer, like hope, flickering beneath the surface, before he looked away, staring at the floor. Mariana cleared her throat, forcing her voice to steady. "Mr. Castillo, you stand accused of burglary, vandalism, and possession of stolen goods. How do you plead?" "Not guilty, Your Honor," he rasped, his voice roughened by years she couldn't account for. Her heart thudded against her ribs. She nodded curtly. "Proceed." The prosecutor, a wiry man named Victor Hensley, launched into his opening statement, detailing the alleged crime, a break-in at a local pawn shop, shelves ransacked, a cash box missing, and Rafael caught fleeing the scene with a bag of jewelry. Mariana listened, her mind racing. This wasn't the Rafael she'd known, the boy who'd once spent hours carving driftwood into tiny boats, who'd talked of opening a shop of his own someday. What had happened to him? As the prosecution rested, the defense attorney, a young woman named Claire Nguyen, rose. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case isn't as simple as it seems. My client maintains his innocence, and will prove there's more to this story than meets the eye." Mariana's gaze drifted to Rafael. His hands were clasped tightly, knuckles white, but his face was a mask. She wanted to leap from the bench, to demand answers. "What happened to you? Where did I lose you?" But her robes anchored her to her role. She was no longer Mari, the girl from the pier. She was Judge Torres, arbiter of truth, and that truth felt impossibly distant. The trial adjourned for the day, and Mariana retreated to her chambers, the weight of the gavel still in her hand. Her assistant, a kind-eyed man named Leo, knocked softly. "You okay, Judge? You seemed off." She forced a smile. "Just tired. It's been a long week." But as Leo left, she sank into her chair, staring at the framed photo on her desk, a shot of her and her late husband on their wedding day. She'd built a life here, a career, a legacy. Yet seeing Raphael had unearthed a part of her she'd buried, the girl who'd once believed promises could hold the world together. That night, she couldn't sleep. The sound of waves crashing against the shore outside her window mingled with memories of Raphael's laughter, his quiet determination. She'd risen far, college, law school, the bench, while he'd fallen. Why hadn't she looked for him? Why hadn't she kept her promise? As dawn broke, Mariana made a decision. She couldn't interfere with the trial, couldn't speak to Raphael directly, but she could listen. She could seek the truth, not just as a judge, but as the friend who'd once sworn to find him. Little did she know, the truth would unravel everything she thought she understood, about Raphael, about herself, and about the town they'd both called home. The second day of Raphael Castillo's trial dawned gray and restless, the sky over Mariner's Cove heavy with the threat of rain. Mariana arrived at the courthouse early, her black robes feeling heavier than usual. She'd spent the night poring over the case file, searching for cracks, for anything that might explain how Raphael had ended up here. The evidence was damning, witness statements, security footage, a bag of stolen goods, but something gnawed at her, a whisper of doubt she couldn't silence. The courtroom filled quickly, the air thick with anticipation. Victor Hensley called his first witness, the pawn shop owner, Mr. Edwin Pierce. A stout man with a perpetual scowl, Pierce recounted the night of the burglary with practiced indignation. "I saw him, Castillo, running out the back door. He had my cash box, my wife's necklace, everything. I chased him, but he was too fast." Mariana's pen paused over her notes. Pierce's testimony was vivid, almost too polished. She glanced at Raphael, who sat motionless, his jaw tight. Clara Nguyen stood for the cross-examination, her voice calm but piercing. "Mr. Pierce, you said it was dark when you saw the defendant. How well lit was your shop?" Pierce faltered. "Well, the power flickered that night. Storm was coming. But I know what I saw. So it was dim, chaotic." "Could you see his face clearly?" Clara pressed. I recognized him later, when the cops brought him in," Pierce stammered. Clara nodded, letting the uncertainty hang. No further questions. Next came the security footage, grainy, flickering images of a figure in a hooded jacket slipping through the shop's back door. Hensley argued it was Raphael, pointing to the jacket's distinctive tear at the sleeve. Mariana squinted at the screen, her pulse quickening. The figure moved with purpose, but the face was a blur. Doubt crept deeper. Clara countered with a forensic expert, Dr. Lila Patel, who dissected the video frame by frame. "The height and build don't conclusively match Mr. Castillo," Patel said, her tone clinical. "And this tear? It's common in worn clothing. Without clearer footage, it's speculative." The jury shifted, murmurs rippling through the room. Mariana felt a flicker of hope, not for Raphael's acquittal, but for the possibility that the truth wasn't as simple as it seemed. As the day wore on, Clara called a surprise witness, Sofia Mendez, a bartender at the Rusty Anchor, a dive bar near the pier. Sofia was wiry, her hair streaked with premature gray, her eyes sharp. "Rafa was with me that night," she said firmly. "He came in around 9, stayed till closing. Said he needed a drink after a fight with his brother." Hensley pounced. "Ms. Mendez, you're a friend of the defendant, correct? Why should we trust your word?" Sofia bristled. Because I've got no reason to lie. I clocked out at midnight, and he walked me home. That shop got hit at 11, check the tapes. The prosecutor smirked. Convenient alibi. No further questions. Mariana's mind raced. Sophia's timeline clashed with Pierce's account, but without corroboration, it was fragile. She adjourned the court, retreating to her chambers as thunder rumbled outside. Alone, she pulled Raphael's file again. His record was a patchwork: petty theft, a bar fight, nothing violent until now. But there was a gap, 10 years unaccounted for after he'd left Mariner's Cove at 18. Where had he gone? A knock startled her. It was Clara, holding a manila envelope. Judge Torres, I know this is unconventional, but I found something. Off the record. Mariana hesitated, then nodded. Clara slid a photo across the desk, a grainy shot of Raphael and another man, taken weeks before the burglary. The other man wore a jacket identical to the one in the footage. His brother, Diego, Clara said. They've been estranged, but Diego's got a rap sheet a mile long. I think he's the key. Mariana's breath hitched. Diego. She remembered him, older, volatile, always dragging Raphael into trouble. Could he have framed Raphael? She couldn't act on this, not yet, but it lit a fire in her. That night, the storm broke, rain lashing her windows as she sat with a glass of wine, memories flooding back. Raphael had idolized Diego, followed him like a shadow. She'd once caught them stealing crab traps from the docks, Raphael wide-eyed with guilt while Diego laughed it off. She'd pulled Raphael aside, begging him to break free. He'll ruin you, she'd said. He'd promised he would. Now, she wondered if that promise had been as empty as hers. By the third day, the trial had become a spectacle. Reporters lined the courthouse steps, locals whispered over coffee at the diner, and Mariana felt the eyes of Mariner's Cove boring into her. She took the bench with a steely resolve, determined to let the evidence speak, even as her heart wrestled with the past. Clara Nguyen called Raphael to the stand. He shuffled forward, his shackles clinking, and Mariana's chest tightened. Up close, the years showed, lines etched deep, a weariness that went beyond fatigue. Mr. Castillo, Clara began, tell us about the night of the burglary. Raphael's voice was low, steady. I was at the Rusty Anchor with Sophia. I'd fought with Diego that day, he wanted me to help him with something shady, and I said no. I walked Sophia home, then went to my place. Next thing I know, cops are banging on my door. And the stolen goods they found? Planted, he said, meeting Mariana's gaze for the first time. Diego's been crashing at my trailer. He must have stashed them there. Hensley leapt up. Objection, speculation. Sustained, Mariana said, though her mind spun. Clara pressed on. Why didn't you tell the police this? Raphael's shoulders sagged. Diego's family. I didn't want to rat him out. But I didn't do this, Mari, Your Honor. The slip of her name hit like a thunderclap. The courtroom buzzed, and Mariana's gavel came down hard. Order. Hensley's cross-examination was brutal. You expect us to believe this convenient story? No witnesses, no proof, just your word against the evidence? Raphael didn't flinch. It's the truth. As he stepped down, Mariana felt the weight of her promise pressing down. She couldn't intervene, but she could listen. And something in Raphael's voice rang true. The defense rested, and closing arguments began. Hensley painted Raphael as a career criminal, a man who'd squandered every chance. Clara countered with a plea for doubt, for humanity. This isn't about perfection, she said. It's about possibility. Give Raphael Castillo the chance to prove who he really is. The jury filed out, and Mariana retreated to her chambers, the storm outside mirroring the tumult within. Hours later, the verdict came, not guilty. The courtroom erupted, cheers, gasps, Hensley's scowl, but Mariana's eyes were on Raphael. He looked at her, a faint smile breaking through, and mouthed, "Thank you." She hadn't done anything, not directly. But as he was unshackled, she felt a thread reconnect, a promise kept, however late. Weeks after the trial, Mariner's Cove buzzed with a new energy. Raphael's acquittal had sparked debate, some called it justice, others a fluke, but Mariana saw it as a beginning. She tracked him down to a small workshop near the pier, where he was sanding driftwood into sculptures, his hands steady with purpose. "Rafa," she said, stepping inside. He turned, surprise softening into a grin. "Mari. Didn't expect you here." "I owed you a visit," she said. "And an apology. I should have looked for you years ago." He shook his head. "You couldn't have known. I lost myself for a while, followed Diego, chased ghosts. But you gave me a chance to start over." They talked for hours, piecing together the lost years. Diego had been arrested days after the trial, caught with the pawn shop's cash box. Raphael was free, rebuilding, and Mariana felt a weight lift. She returned to the bench with a renewed fire, advocating for second chances, for the overlooked. Raphael's workshop grew, drawing locals and tourists alike, a testament to resilience. And on quiet nights, they'd meet at the pier, watching the tide roll in, two friends who'd found each other again when it mattered most. The shock wasn't the verdict, it was the ripple of hope it sent through a town, and two lives, forever changed.